All right, let's jump right in. We're diving deep into 1970s movies today,
Sounds like fun.
using a list from the top tens, those user-generated rankings.
Oh yeah, those can be interesting.
It's all about the most popular films, according to, well, the users on their site.
A great way to see what really resonated with audiences.
Exactly. And get ready for some lively debate. I mean, just glancing at this list.
Oh, I bet.
We've got iconic films, controversial picks,
Ah, the ones that always get people talking.
and maybe even a few surprises along the way.
I'm sure. I'm really curious to see how this list reflects the 1970s.
Yeah, it was such a pivotal time for film. I mean, you think about the changes happening.
Absolutely. Socially, politically, it all spilled onto the screen.
Cinema wasn't just about entertainment anymore. It was tackling some really complex issues.
Right, reflecting all the anxieties, the hopes.
Of a generation grappling with a world in flux.
I think that's why 70s films still resonate with us today.
Absolutely. And right off the bat, we see this tension between like pure entertainment and these more artistic films.
I see.
Just look at the top two contenders here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Star Wars and The Godfather talk about a clash of titans.
Wow, yeah. Both completely iconic, but in such different ways.
And the comments from users. Some are fiercely defending Star Wars.
Calling it the greatest ever, I'm sure.
Exactly. While others are like, how could anyone challenge The Godfather?
It's almost like comparing apples and oranges.
Right. I mean, The Godfather, you got the gritty realism, those operatic scenes.
So much focus on character development. It's like a modern Shakespearean tragedy.
While Star Wars, it ushered in this whole era of special effects-driven blockbusters.
Changed the way stories were told visually forever.
And the audience experience, too. Think about the impact of Jaws.
Oh, yeah, see, Spielberg, talk about a master of suspense.
He practically invented the summer blockbuster with that film.
But it's so much more than just stares, isn't it?
Exactly. The way he builds tension.
The unseen threat, the music.
It's tapping into our primal fear, of the unknown.
Makes you think twice about going for a swim.
Totally. And Jaws also highlights how technical innovations can elevate a genre.
Oh, how so?
Well, those animatronic sharks, groundbreaking at the time.
Right, but notoriously difficult to work with.
Exactly. And those challenges forced Spielberg to be creative.
Relying more on what you don't see, which ultimately made it scarier.
It's like limitations breeding brilliance.
So true. You sometimes have to work around obstacles to find those truly innovative solutions.
And Jaws wasn't the only film pushing boundaries when it comes to genre. This list also includes Alien.
Oh, yeah. Another game changer, right?
Completely redefined sci-fi horror. One user even commented, "This film marks the beginning of the Alien saga."
And they're not wrong. I mean, the franchise is still going strong today.
Alien is so interesting because it's blending genres in a way that hadn't really been done before.
Right. You have the suspense and dread of horror, but then also the futuristic setting of science fiction.
Plus action. You even get a touch of social commentary in there.
Yeah, it's not just surviving the monster. It's about corporate greed, those deeper themes.
Exactly. There's so much going on beneath the surface.
Makes you think, even while you're jumping out of your seat.
And then, of course, you've got Halloween, which practically wrote the rule book for slasher films.
Ah, yes. The one that set the standard.
Some even call it the best slasher of all time, which, honestly, it's hard to argue with that.
So simple, yet so effective.
It's the execution, that atmosphere John Carpenter creates.
Oh, absolutely. His restraint is key.
He doesn't rely on excessive gore. It's all about suspense.
Those long, drawn-out shots, use of shadow and sound.
And that minimalist score. It's become so iconic.
A true lesson in less is more, especially in horror.
And then there's Michael Myers himself, that masked, silent boogeyman.
So terrifying, yet strangely fascinating.
He's become this enduring archetype in horror, that embodiment of pure evil.
Speaking of iconic figures, we can't forget about the legendary performances of the 70s.
Oh, so many to choose from.
Think Jack Nicholson, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Chinatown.
He just brought this raw energy, this charisma to every role.
He was a critical darling, ain't he a box office draw?
His portrayal of Randall McMurphy, that rebellious spirit challenging the system in Cuckoo's Nest.
It's still studied in acting classes today.
It's like he embodied the 70s, that anti-establishment, counterculture energy.
It wasn't just acting, it was an attitude.
And Nicholson wasn't alone. Al Pacino, Robert De Niro.
Pushing the boundaries of what audiences expected from actors.
Their work in films like The Godfather and Taxi Driver.
They weren't afraid to dig deep, to explore the darker side of human nature.
And those darker, more psychological films, they're well represented on this list.
Oh, for sure.
Like Taxi Driver, with De Niro's chilling portrayal of Travis Bickle.
A Vietnam vet struggling with PTSD, alienation in that gritty New York City.
It's disturbing yet incredibly compelling.
It reflects the disillusionment, the anxieties of the post-Vietnam era.
That unflinching look at urban decay, violence.
And the psychological scars that run deep.
You know, it's fascinating how Taxi Driver was controversial when it came out.
Oh, really?
But now, it's considered a masterpiece. Shows how our understanding of film can change over time.
Absolutely. As cultural contexts shift, so do our interpretations.
And Taxi Driver isn't the only film on this list that sparked debate.
What else do we have?
A Clockwork Orange, with that dystopian vision and shocking imagery.
Oh yeah, Kubrick. Definitely not for everyone.
Some saw it as a brilliant satire, while others condemned the violence.
It definitely provoked strong reactions,
A Clockwork Orange is undeniably powerful, thought-provoking,
raising questions about free will, morality, the very nature of society.
and visually stunning. Kubrick's use of color, composition, those unsettling wide-angle shots,
It's also deliberate, designed to make you uncomfortable, challenge your perceptions,
like he's forcing us to confront the darkness within ourselves.
which can be a valuable, albeit unsettling experience.
Okay, so we've got the blockbusters, the gritty dramas, the controversial picks, but this list also includes films that are just pure fun.
A little bit of everything.
Like we've got Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory,
Oh, I love that one. So whimsical, visually delightful.
a perfect adaptation of Roald Dahl's classic, appealing to kids and adults alike.
And Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka. Unforgettable.
He brings that mischievous energy, both charming and slightly unsettling.
And the Oompa Loompas. Creepy and delightful at the same time.
It's a film that really captures the magic of childhood imagination.
A reminder that even in a decade marked by upheaval, there was still room for pure escapism.
And speaking of joyful escapism, we've got another classic, Grease.
Oh, yes. John Travolta, Olivia Newton-John, singing and dancing their way through high school.
Who doesn't love a good musical?
It captured that spirit of teenage rebellion, romance. It resonated with audiences worldwide.
It became a cultural phenomenon, influencing fashion, music, everything.
And it's still so enjoyable today. Those catchy tunes, those energetic dance numbers.
Pure fun. But even in its lightheartedness, Grease touches on some important themes.
Oh, definitely.
Like social hierarchies, peer pressure, finding your identity.
A coming-of-age story that remains relatable even decades later.
It's amazing, even just in this first glimpse, how this list showcases the incredible diversity of 1970s cinema.
From gritty realism to pure escapism, thought-provoking dramas, laugh-out-loud comedies.
It's clear this was a decade where filmmakers were pushing boundaries, redefining what cinema could be.
And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to uncover.
I can't wait to delve deeper into the films that shaped a generation and continue to influence us today.
Let's keep the cinematic journey going.
We'll be back in a moment to dive into even more 70s treasures. Welcome back to our deep dives into 1970s cinema. We're ready to explore even more films from this incredible decade.
And last time we touched on that rebellious spirit, that counterculture energy which really permeated the 70s.
Absolutely. And we see that so clearly in films like A Clockwork Orange. But it goes even further in a film like Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Oh, a classic.
It dared to poke fun at, well, everything sacred. Religion, heroism, you name it.
Monty Python's humor, it was so absurdist, irreverent.
Nonsense at times, but with this sharp satirical edge.
They weren't just about making people laugh. They were challenging authority, questioning dogma.
And exposing the absurdity of it all. With coconuts and killer rabbits, no less.
And what's amazing is how their humor has lasted. It's transcended generations.
People are still quoting those lines, those sketches, decades later.
Their influence on comedy is undeniable. So many comedians were inspired by that absurdist style.
That willingness to break the rules, to use humor for social commentary.
Absolutely. It's not just about the jokes. It's about the message underneath.
And Monty Python wasn't the only group pushing boundaries in the realm of comedy. This list also includes the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Ah, yes. A film that defied categorization, became a midnight movie sensation.
It's a celebration of individuality, self-expression, sexual liberation.
It embraced everything strange, unconventional, weird.
It created a space for outsiders, a place to come together, celebrate their differences.
The costumes, the music, the audience participation, it was a whole experience.
It wasn't just a film. It was a phenomenon,
Yeah.
empowering people to be themselves.
And it really challenged those societal norms around gender, sexuality, conformity.
It encouraged people to question the status quo, embrace their own unique identity.
A message that's still so relevant today as we continue to grapple with inclusion, representation.
The right to be yourself.
Hmm.
And speaking of films that challenge societal norms, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, a powerful one.
Jack Nicholson, again, giving an iconic performance as Randall McMurphy.
Fighting against the system, the oppressive authority of that mental institution.
He's just so charismatic, full of life, even in the face of that oppression.
You really root for him, trying to bring a sense of freedom to those patients.
The film is such a powerful commentary on those dehumanizing effects of institutions, the importance of individuality.
It resonates on so many levels. Mental illness, a critique of authority, celebrating the human spirit.
And the supporting performances are incredible. Danny DeVito, Christopher Lloyd.
Louise Fletcher as Nurse Ratched. So chilling.
They create such memorable characters, adding depth and complexity to the story.
It's a film that stays with you, raises questions about our treatment of mental illness, the abuse of power.
The importance of fighting for your rights. And speaking of fighting for your rights, we've got Network on this list.
Oh, yes. That scathing critique of the media, its influence on society.
Peter Finch's I'm mad as hell speech. It's still quoted today.
A rallying cry against corporate greed, sensationalism, the manipulation of the masses.
And Network was so ahead of its time, wasn't it?
In a way, yes. It predicted the rise of reality TV, the blurring of news and entertainment.
The power of these media conglomerates to shape public opinion.
And it feels even more relevant today with our 24-hour news cycles, social media echo chambers.
The constant bombardment of information, it's overwhelming.
Network serves as this reminder to be critical, to question the narratives we're being fed.
Absolutely. We need to be discerning consumers of information now more than ever.
And it's a testament to the power of satire, to hold that mirror up to society.
Okay, so we've talked about that rebellious spirit of the 70s, but this list also showcases a softer, more introspective side to the era.
Interesting. What kind of films are you thinking of?
Well, films like Annie Hall and Manhattan, directed by Woody Allen.
Oh yeah, his films definitely have that unique blend of humor and pathos.
They offer a witty, bittersweet exploration of love, relationships, all the complexities of human connection.
Annie Hall in particular broke all the rules of romantic comedy.
Right, that fragmented, non-linear narrative reflecting the chaos of life and love.
And Diane Keaton's performance as Annie Hall, so brilliant.
She's quirky, vulnerable, completely relatable.
And her style became iconic. Those hats, those menswear-inspired outfits.
She embodied that independent, unconventional woman of the 70s.
Absolutely. Annie Hall challenged that traditional Hollywood formula for romance.
Paving the way for more realistic, nuanced portrayals of relationships on screen.
And it's still so enjoyable today. Sharp wit, insightful observations about human nature.
And those charmingly neurotic characters. It's a reminder that even amidst societal upheaval, there's always a place for love, laughter, human connection.
Connection, that's a good segue, because we can't forget about Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh, Spielberg. A hopeful, optimistic vision of first contact with extraterrestrial life.
It wasn't just about aliens, it was about that human longing for connection, our search for meaning beyond the everyday.
It captured that sense of wonder and awe, a time when people were exploring spirituality, the paranormal.
The possibility of life beyond Earth.
And Close Encounters was a visual masterpiece, those special effects, John Williams' score.
It's a film that continues to inspire a sense of wonder, reminding us of all that's out there.
It makes you want to believe. And then there's Superman, tapping into that same sense of hope and idealism.
Christopher Reeve, the perfect Man of Steel.
So earnest, so pure, he embodied those classic superhero values.
Truth, justice, the American way.
Superman was groundbreaking in terms of special effects.
It was the first time audiences truly believed a man could fly.
But beyond the spectacle, it was a story about hope, heroism, good triumphing over evil.
It captured imaginations and paved the way for the superhero films we see today.
It's interesting, both Close Encounters and Superman were directed by Spielberg.
He really seemed to understand what audiences craved during that time.
A master storyteller, creating characters and worlds that resonated on an emotional level.
He knew the power of cinema to transport us, to inspire, to make us believe in something bigger than ourselves.
And he wasn't afraid to experiment, to push the boundaries of what was possible on screen.
His influence on 70s cinema is undeniable.
But as we go through this list, I'm realizing it's not just about those big names, the blockbusters, the iconic directors.
True.
There are so many hidden gems here. Films that might not be as famous, but still deserve our attention.
Films that offer unique perspectives, innovative storytelling, a glimpse into that cultural landscape.
Like Harold and Maude, a dark comedy, an unlikely romance between a morbid teenager and a free-spirited woman in her 70s.
Oh, a cult classic.
It celebrates life, embraces eccentricity, reminds us that age is just a number.
It's about living life to the fullest, finding joy in the unexpected.
And then you have The Long Goodbye, Robert Altman's neo-noir masterpiece.
Oh, yes. He deconstructed that classic detective genre.
With a laid-back protagonist, that improvisational style, hazy, dreamlike atmosphere.
Altman was a master of ensemble filmmaking, those slices of life capturing those messy human interactions.
The Long Goodbye rewards multiple viewings, with its layers of meaning, subtle humor.
A haunting sense of melancholy.
It challenges your expectations, leaves you with that lingering sense of unease.
And since we're talking about films that leave a lasting impression, we can't forget about Dog Day Afternoon.
Sidney Lumet's crime drama,
Yeah.
based on a true story, a bank robbery gone wrong.
So gripping. That real-time narrative, the claustrophobic setting.
Al Pacino's performance as the bank robber, so desperate, so unpredictable.
It keeps you on the edge of your seat the whole time.
And it raises questions about criminal motivation, the media's influence, human behavior under pressure.
It's a reminder that real life can be more bizarre, more compelling than any fiction we could dream up.
We've covered so much ground already, but there's still more to come.
I'm ready for the final act of this deep dive.
Stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment to explore those remaining cinematic treasures and discuss their lasting legacy. And we're back for our final act in this 1970s movie extravaganza.
It's been quite a journey so far. Blockbusters, comedies, those rebellious films.
Capturing that unique energy of the 70s, yeah.
Now, as we look at what's left on this top 10s list,
What are you noticing?
I'm seeing a theme of introspection emerge.
Oh, interesting.
Like filmmakers are grappling with more personal, complex narratives.
Yeah, I see that too. It's like a shift away from those grand, sweeping stories of the early 70s.
More focus on the internal struggles of the characters.
And a perfect example of that is Five Easy Pieces. Jack Nicholson, brilliant as always.
Oh, yeah. What's he playing this time?
This restless soul, a guy who seems to have it all, but is deeply unhappy, drifting through life.
Searching for meaning, but can't seem to connect with anything or anyone.
It really captures that feeling of disillusionment, something a lot of people felt after Vietnam, all the social and political upheaval.
Like the old certainties were gone, people were struggling to find their place in the world.
Exactly. And you see that same kind of searching in The Deer Hunter.
Oh, wow. Heavy stuff.
Yeah, it tackles Vietnam head on, but it's more than just a war film. It's a meditation on the psychological impact of violence.
Loss of innocence, those enduring bonds of friendship, tested under extreme pressure.
It's powerful, disturbing, but incredibly moving at the same time.
De Niro, Walken, Meryl Streep early in her career.
Their performances are just phenomenal.
It captures the human cost of war in such a profound way.
And reminds us that those wounds, they linger even decades later.
Speaking of films that deal with difficult subject matter, The Exorcist is on this list too.
Still one of the most talked about, controversial horror films ever made.
Terrified audiences upon its release, still has an impact today.
But it goes beyond the scares, doesn't it? It's about faith, doubt, that battle between good and evil.
Tapping into those primal fears of the unknown, what might be lurking out there.
And it does it in such a visceral, psychologically disturbing way.
Definitely not for the faint of heart.
It gets under your skin and stays there. And what's interesting, The Exorcist was a huge box office success.
Really, despite all the controversy.
Shows that audiences were ready for films that challenged them, made them think.
Exploring those darker aspects of human experience.
And speaking of challenging audiences, we have to talk about Chinatown.
Roman Polanski, neo-noir, a classic.
Jack Nicholson as Jake Gitz, that private eye who uncovers this web of corruption, deceit.
He's perfect in that role, embodying that cynical, world-weary attitude.
Chinatown is about lost innocence, the abuse of power, that feeling of fighting a rigged system.
A bleak vision of Los Angeles, but beautifully crafted. The cinematography, the score, those performances.
A film that stays with you, reminds you that sometimes the truth is more disturbing than fiction.
And shifting gears a bit, we've got Dog Day Afternoon on here. Sidney Lumet's crime drama.
Based on a true story, a bank robbery gone wrong. Al Pacino, amazing as always.
Playing Sonny, that desperate, unpredictable bank robber.
It's thrilling, thought-provoking, keeps you on the edge of your seat.
But it also makes you question things like the nature of fame, how the media shapes events.
Those motivations of people pushed to desperate measures.
Captures that energy of the 70s, that disillusionment, willingness to challenge authority.
And it reminds us that real life can be wilder than anything we could imagine.
Definitely makes you appreciate the power of true stories.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the most popular films of the 1970s,
It's been quite a ride.
one thing's for sure, this decade was about so much more than just entertainment.
It was a time of change, and those changes were reflected in the films being made.
Absolutely. We saw a shift away from that old studio system. Independent filmmakers emerged.
New voices, new perspectives, a willingness to experiment with genre, push boundaries.
To tackle those tough subjects, those previously taboo topics.
And audiences were craving these new stories. These films that reflected their lives made them think.
From The Godfather to Star Wars, from Five Easy Pieces to Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
What a reign.
The 1970s was a decade of cinematic diversity, reflecting the complexities of the era.
And these films, they continue to be watched, discussed, debated, even today.
They're a testament to that enduring power of great storytelling.
They remind us of a time when cinema took risks, challenged conventions, reflected those complexities of human experience.
Now, here's a tough question for you and for our listeners out there.
That me?
If you had to pick just one film to represent the 1970s, which one would it be?
Oh, wow, that is a tough one. So many great choices.
I know, right? I'm curious to hear what everyone thinks. Share your picks with us on social media.
Let's keep the conversation going.
Tell us which film you think best embodies the spirit of this incredible decade in cinema.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep watching, and keep those reels rolling.